Good here. Good to go, Tracy?
Yep, it started.
Sirbu,
Yeah, recording has started.
Matt Sirbu doing hybrid AT POV, take one, and action.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for joining us today. As we go through and we think about really the goals of IT, what we've recognized is first and foremost, they know that they need to provide a positive end user experience, not just for their external customers, but also for their internal customers, and making sure that their systems are working correctly so that everybody feels like IT is providing additional value to them. We also know that they have a desire to positively impact the business in terms of helping them accelerate growth, drive into new markets, and really drive the intelligence that they need to have so that the business can overachieve their goals by having IT be the engine that truly powers the business. And then ultimately, we also know that most IT companies know that they need to manage risk. They need to manage risk really of business disruption. The mission-critical systems need to stay highly available. They need to stay reliable. So those are the three major goals that IT is typically being tasked with today. But what we know is there's a lot of things standing in the way of that. And if we just kind of think about this from a plot, we've constantly had this, we constantly hear from our IT customers that they are always being tasked to do more with less, and it's really hard for them to react to the growing demands of the business today. So if we think about traditional IT, it's the rate of change of the business itself is definitely outpacing at an unprecedented rate that of the demands that traditional IT can deliver. And we recognize that there's a gap between the two, which is constantly being filled by IT. So traditional IT is just trying to keep the lights on and dealing with these growing systems, and the business is now needing to add additional demands and drive faster into new markets, and traditional IT just cannot keep up. So Gartner did a survey, and they actually surveyed about 900 CIOs, and 90% of them felt that the best way for them to bridge that gap, to be able to provide the resources the business needs, is to really focus on hybrid IT. And so that brings up the question, well, what does hybrid IT mean? Well, really, there's three different components in terms of adopting hybrid IT. Number one is they need to start looking at how can they successfully adopt public cloud. How can they pull that into their environment so that they can speed up their time to market, so that they can speed up their service offerings where it makes sense? Number two, they really need to start looking at renovating the core and taking these legacy architectures and seeing what they can do to modernize them to drive additional performance gains and availability gains that weren't available back when they initially stood up these systems. And then finally, now that we have more traffic going between mobile devices, between remote offices, and now to the cloud, they really need to start taking another look at their network, and they need to make sure that it's ready to be able to handle this additional workload that's going to be put on it and test on it. So ultimately, hybrid IT is really built up of those three different things: public cloud adoption, data center transformation, and network readiness. At this point, Mr. Customer, why we're here today is to really start focusing on one piece, which is really data center transformation. Am I going through this, Aaron? Am I going through the data center transformation piece?
Yeah, please.
All right, I'll keep going. So I'm going to talk to you about data center transformation. And typically what we see with most data centers today is they're built up on traditional three-tiered architectures: server, networking, and storage. Because of those huge systems that are out there, we also recognize that most organizations have organized their teams based on those different tiers. So there's a separate server team for the networking team, for the storage team as well. And what that does is it makes the interconnect between them and the processes to manage those systems very manual. It's very hard for them to make changes and coordinate their resources and efforts together. And well, what is the problem with this? Well, it ultimately means that those manual processes means it's very slow for them to deliver those IT resources. In fact, what we see is typically average time for provisioning new systems can take up to 7 weeks. In addition, with those separate teams, we recognize that it's very costly and cumbersome. Over 70% of IT spend is typically used just to maintain those traditional three-tiered architectures, meaning that's only leaving about 30% of IT budgets to help them look at bridging that gap of shadow IT and driving more availability of their traditional systems for the business needs. And finally, with those three-tiered architectures, we recognize that it takes a significant amount of time and energy just to maintain those systems versus innovating them. In fact, that's that typical 80-20 rule, where 80% of the time is really spent just maintaining and keeping the lights on versus driving new efficiencies within their data center. So the question is, how do we really overcome these obstacles and increase that agility that's out there today? And number one, we need to start thinking about data center transformation is to start looking at virtualization and stripping the physical hardware, or I'm sorry, stripping the instances and the applications away from the physical hardware constraints that are out there. And most companies are doing this today in some form or fashion, and it's becoming more of a mainstream process today to try to virtualize first and foremost. The second piece that drives us to start looking at really what we would call integrated systems, which instead of having these traditional three-tiered architectures, start looking at it all holistically, having a single system that's built up of compute, networking, and storage that we can deploy out into an environment as quickly as possible so that we can start provisioning services much faster. In fact, what we find is that typically, when customers try to build an environment themselves, they spend 75% of the time just getting things set up before they can even provision resources. By leveraging an integrated system that we can drop in and start provisioning services, it cuts that time down to about 25% for integration of those systems or for implementation of those systems. The next thing that will then happen is we can start to optimize those teams and those systems really around those integrated solutions by looking at it all holistically. That provides significant optimization opportunities for the teams to start looking at, instead of just their individual silo, start looking at compute, networking, and storage resources holistically. And then finally, the last piece for data center transformation is to start providing automation within their environments so that we can take that from provisioning services from weeks down to days or hours. And that's truly the process that builds up data center transformation, is to provide virtualization, integration, optimization, and automation. Now, what's standing in the way of that? Well, there's a few things. What we know is that typically most companies, if we think about it, 80% of their time is just focused on keeping the lights on. They don't have the time to look at their tools out there and see how everything is working together. Ultimately, they lack insight into their environment and those interdependencies. On top of that, as they're going out spending some time doing research, there's way too many options that have really confused the market in terms of hyper-converged, converged, software-defined, cloud. When do I go with one over the other? There's just way too many options, and it's provided way too much confusion. And it's typically there's a lot of architecture that's out there that doesn't really help customers identify the pain points within their specific environments. And then finally, the last piece is, again, we mentioned it, resources. They're spending way too much time maintaining their current three-tiered environment. That it's really hard for them to go out there and do the right evaluation that they need so that they can drive data center transformation. So this leads to how we can help. And first and foremost, we have a solution that we call our Data Center Tech Check. And really what it provides for you is we'll start off with the first pain point that you have, which is resources. We provide the subject matter expertise. We provide an industry expert that can actually go out there and look at the environments and provide significant insights into options for your specific systems. And the best way that we do that is to truly look at your systems. We start off with leveraging our collection tools, our agentless collection tools, so that we can really see how all of your systems are performing and how they're working together. And that gives you that detailed inventory today into your systems today. Based on that, we can provide insight into all those different options to come up with the best architecture and make recommendations for next steps so that you can truly start making your investments in the future focused around driving data center transformation and not just driving maintaining your systems today. And with that, I will stop.
Dude, that was awesome.
I agree. It was simple, very easy to understand. Sales can understand that, so that's a good job.
Yeah. No, I thought it was really well done. Any feedback in terms of positives and negatives?
Yeah, I thought it was really good, Matt. One thing I've started to do on this, because I've been doing this quite a bit as well lately, is particularly when we're going to lead with the data center transformation story, is starting with renovating the core and making sure your network's ready before you start adopting the cloud. Because the way we have this ordered is start adopting the cloud and then get your network ready and transform your data center. So it's just a very small tweak, but I think it's important to talk about making sure that your network is ready for public cloud adoption and the proliferation of mobility and all of those things in the data center and on campus that you need to be ready for, and renovating the core.
Go data center transformation, network readiness, and then public cloud.
Yeah, exactly. that's what I've been doing. It's not something you have to do. It's just was the only comment I really had. Other than that,
I like that as a flow perspective. I get what you're saying.
Well, what I did with a couple of customers is talk about public cloud adoption and data center transformation just to set that stage. And then my question was, is your network ready? And had them talk about their network to tell me if it was ready or not, simply because I was looking for opportunity there. But
the best part about all this is like I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it.
I agree.
It's just it speaks to the flexibility that this is supposed to bring to the person presenting it, and I just think it's awesome that I've seen this done like a million different ways, and I think that's why I like recording it. And I think about what we're going to do with the recordings. It would be really cool to have a library somewhere for people to see the different ways to do it. And so to me, that's a takeaway. The other thing is you've used a couple stats there that I hadn't heard before. That this goes back to Scott Harper's takeaway that I don't know where he's at with that.
Well, that was something, Aaron, we should be targeting on the training right on the 15th.
Yes.
Is getting those stats together. We should add that to that log.
I've added it to the under the data center point of view run thing that the stats sheet needs to be done, and Harper owns that. So we'll just make sure that he knows that. Of course, if he listens to this video, he'll hear us making fun of him. So let's make sure. Tracy, can we maybe make sure that Harper gets his act together?
Yes, Aaron, sorry. I'm just speaking to Sean. Yeah, no problem. I'm going to stop recording now, okay?
Oh, that's perfect time to stop.
One thing to leave it up there.